2019 meeting of the Greenwood Redevelopment Commission to order. Roll call, please, Amanda.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Harris?
Present.
Mr. Hoover?
Here.
Mr. Moan?
Here.
Mr. Hopper?
Here.
And non-voting advisor, Mr. Alexander?
Here.
Thank you.
Minutes of the regular meeting, our last meeting, November 12, 2019, have been distributed to members of the commission. Any corrections, additions, or deletions? Is there a motion to approve?
So motion. Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Under new business, consideration of professional services contract with Hiram's Advertising and Public Relations. Kevin, are you going to present this to us?
Yeah, so for those of us who haven't been here in December, for those of you who haven't, this is normally our redo all the contracts days with everyone. The first one is Hirons, is very similar to what they had for this is the fourth year of the general engagement with the redevelopment commission, and they went through and created a deck for us of some of the works, some of the, there we go, different type of works you see that they helped produce for this commission, everything from media advisory to outlining the positions of the redevelopment commission on the city's website, to updating citizens and stakeholders on social media. I want to point out that we're putting some, even though I can't get drones to work in here, we're putting them up on social media like YouTube. It's been working out really well. These are some of your projects and things in the TIF. Really cool picture, just as an FYI, on the project that we supported by demolishing Pool City. I think it's open now. Todd Anthony's Mills house over there. That's really pretty nice change in the right direction for Front Road.
I thought you were talking about the nachos.
Well, that's from Oak Barrel. They made the national, or not national, the regional news for best nachos. Bunch of coverage on different amenities that you guys, this board has. There you go, pickleball, man. And it just goes on and on. And so by having professional media relations, we're able to tell our story as well as continue to drive development in Greenwood. So if there's any questions I can answer. If not, the only change I would say this year is to split it upon between the four TIFs with money, essentially. The State Road 135, Fry, East, and Central. For years we've paid it out of just the East, and I think it would be more equitable to split that allocation.
And how would that be prorated?
I think just equally. There's four of them, split it equally.
Okay.
Other questions for Kevin? Comments? Pleasure of the commission.
Just to note that the amount is increased by $500 a month this year.
Yeah, let me speak to that. So it's been $5,000 since we started 4 years ago. So we sat down with them, looked at where their rates are, and agreed to kind of looking back at the 2.5% increase over the 4 years. And that's how we got to the 10 now. Much like Mr. Watson, they had 3 years where they didn't get those increases, but we explained to them that 4 years is vast in government. I mean, to adjust to a change. So it annualizes to basically a 2.5% increase over the last 4 years. So it moved from $5,000 a month to $5,500, which we thought was pretty fair.
I would agree that Hiram's has done a good job, and I do know I know because it's been with some things I've been involved in, they have volunteered and done stuff without charging the city, and so I do appreciate the work they've done.
And on the other contract, you see, I saw there was a thing there for like the DPW building. If they do work for other boards in the city, it doesn't go against this contract. It goes, so if they do something for stormwater and sanitary sewers and things make their own contract.
Is that a motion to approve, Mr. Campbell?
Yes,
Is there a second?
Second.
yeah, now I have some questions about the contract in particular.
Okay, I
We've
understand.
gone through this every year, I think, but we've always added under section B after compensation that special projects and special projects approval in the amount not to exceed $10,000 per contract with the approval of the commission president and vice president. And I love hirings, I like what they've done, but I think that I don't like open-ended contracts. And in this contract, it also says in C, any additional services shall be provided at the firm's standard hourly rates for special projects and services only as mutually agreed between the parties. And I also noticed almost all the PSAs we're doing tonight have that section about agreed between the parties, and which is standard, but does that mean if there's any special things, they have to come back to the RDC for a vote? Or how else would the RDC approve it?
I don't think there's another way for the RDC to approve it. I think that's something
Well,
that would be delegated to President. I know.
In last year's contract, we said that it could be agreed to and assigned by, well, actually last year it said by the firm, which would be that Hiram's could have approved it without notifying us, but it should read approved or signed by the RDC's president and vice president, which I don't have a problem with, but I don't know that it always needs to come back to them. I just think the approved by the party seems vague, and I'm not sure if that means it would have to come back if there's additional services. Last year we made allotment for them just to be approved by the president and vice president.
But I wouldn't have but I mean, that's a fairly significant amount, even in the grand scheme of things. I would think we would have some advance notice that they would be, something
Yeah,
would be
and
coming, they'd be doing some work for us.
Yeah, and if we want to put a not to, the rationale for that goes back to when you do get I'll just make up one that didn't happen, but something like an Amazon or something where you do get a big draw against the retainer, essentially, not the retainer, sorry, against the billing contract of $5,000 a month. It can take away from the normal work done on the revolving commission. So you're trying to segment out the cost without borrowing out your normal services. But I think to align Mr. Campbell's concerns, we could just set a not to exceed, $70,000. That would give the president and vice president the opportunity to approve 2 or 1 scope. It would still not be an open-ended contract, or not 70, sorry, with the new amount, whatever. It would be basically $10,000, whatever the aggregate amount is under the new contract rate. So you could basically say that there was the ability to either approve 1 or 2 scopes or something, but give a $10,000 flexibility buffer if you did get a transformational project, and be able to respond quickly. And then anything else we'd have to come through for a contract amendment. That would be fine with me.
And I don't know that under the RDC umbrella, we would have emergency things that might need a quick thing. I could see why the city, there may be something that would happen in the city that would require some public relations efforts on a very short time frame, but I don't know that it would be anything.
I'm not sure.
Project.
I think that when we've done this in the past, the reasoning was just to put some sort of a limit that it can go. I think it says it's not to exceed $10,000, but for speed purposes, it allows the president and the vice president of the RDC to approve those.
Yeah. So the contract is $66,000 in aggregate. I would be fine if we just left. If you wanted the ability to have the opportunity to respond, if you had something that was gonna suck away time, to put a not to exceed of $76,000 on it, that would allay Mr. Campbell's concerns of basically being able to approve $5,000 indefinitely, right?
Well, I think that in the past, what was talked about is that there may be a special project come up in addition to the 5,500, and there may be multiple special projects within the year, and that if there are those, that it has to be approved by the council or the commission.
Parties.
Yeah, and if you put a limit of 70, 6,000, that's only one $10,000 project. There may be multiple.
So you just want the language changed so that rather than the president and the vice president, it has to go through the.
No, I don't mind it being president and vice president. Just right now, the current contract says between the parties.
Oh, okay, makes sense. Oh, so
Okay,
it's
and I think that's vague and could easily be interpreted to mean it'd have to come back before us for a vote.
That's,
Now, if that's what you want to do, that's fine.
no,
but
it's up to you. It's up to you. I'm just saying we're flexible on
Yeah,
whatever is best administratively.
I would like the same language that was in last year's contract included, with the exception under section C, where last year it said by the firm's president and vice president, it should say by the RDC's president and vice president.
Mr. Hodgson?
Kevin, if you don't want to change the contract, you could deal with this today just by, you could decide today just in a simple motion to authorize the president and vice president to speak for the commission on this thing, and that way we wouldn't have to change the contract.
Yeah, I think what he's saying is basically, by a separate motion, delegate authority and include limits if you want on that authority.
Okay, yeah, I would like
And
that.
not necessarily change the contract
Okay.
itself.
Okay, so we have a motion without any changes on the floor.
Okay,
Let's call that for all in favor of the motion as presented. Say
Aye.
Opposed, the same. So that passes. Now,
now,
I wish to.
I would like to make the motion to authorize the president and vice president of the RDC to speak for the commission in regards to these additional services with amounts not to exceed $10,000 per project. Is that?
It's your motion.
Well, I mean, does that say what I want it to say? I mean,
Yeah, with the understanding that, you know, it could have multiple projects
30
throughout the
projects.
year.
I mean, that's been the,
As long as you're comfortable with that.
yeah,
So we're, like, not to complain about the $10,000 amount, but you said 10,000 per project. So we're paying them $5,000 already a month, maybe 5,000 per special project.
well,
That
in,
way you can get 120,000 added on to the contract.
in theory they could, but that would be, I'm just going by what the language was in years past and how we, did this, so.
$10,000 seems like a lot of work. I don't know.
And maybe part of it's incumbent upon whoever your president or vice president is next year to be able to say, no, I don't think so. Depending on what the issue is.
All right. Well, I have a motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Maybe there'll be some no votes.
That sounded like a reluctant second, but okay.
He's seconded for purpose of discussion. Any
There you
discussion?
go.
Okay.
Well, I was wondering if you wanted to, because I see the concern that $10,000 you could just do it over and over and over again.
And then
With
because
just-
like 55.
Right, without being in the ballpark, you could a secondary motion to give an aggregate limit, to say 10,000 per project, not to exceed
Well,
10,000
think-
per project.
If I understand it correctly, I think what we did in the past was that the president and vice president could approve additional expenditures up to 10,000, but if it came to 10,000, then it would have to come back to the
So
RDC.
you're not saying 10,000 per special project, you're
No,
saying
no, I think in the past it was
up to
10,000 per project.
for special projects.
It was,
That's my
that was, actually, the contract in the past said 10,000 per project. But if we wanted to put a 10,000 max, I mean, it's up to you all. I'm just saying that I think we need to do something.
How much have we spent in special projects?
We had 2 this year, and I believe so it's 10,000 total. So we can put the $10,000 cap on it or a different cap, totally fine. With us, it was really just a way of administrative ease when we had small engagements rather than annual contracts. So if you want to put a cap on it, totally good with us. And if we do get into some sort of initiative, we'll just bring it back in front of the board and discuss it.
Were there separate, when these 2 projects came along and each for $10,000, did that detract from the 55 or 5,000 a month?
It increased the aggregate. It increased basically the total contract from 60,000 to 70,000, and it allowed us to focus. I believe one of them was on the Wursville Road Eastern Extension and the traffic issues. That allowed us to focus on that project without taking money away from the general allocation from all the other things you saw in there in the general business. So it was a way of keeping your hours, essentially, it's all about hourly rate, and when you have more work of doing that. And so I think we're fine with putting a $10,000, basically, allowing that to be a threshold the president could decide upon, a flex, depending on the amount of work that comes through this commission. And if we decide that there's other things, we'll just come with a new scope and discuss it here.
Well, I'm comfortable with that, so I would amend my motion to allow the president and vice president to approve additional expenditures up to $10,000 for the year.
In the aggregate for special projects.
Yes.
Mr. Hopper,
Second,
you
yeah.
second that. Further discussions on the motion as amended? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right, the second one is the redoing the contract with CRC, which is Chuck Sagan, who works the redevelopment commission, serves as owner's rep, and does a lot of the planning and work actually day to day for the commission's projects. I believe, Nana, this is the same, right, as what we've had.
Yes,
In years
it's
past.
just for 2-year term,
So-
$6,000.
Yeah, this is the exact same as what existed.
Questions for Kevin on this? Is there a motion for approval of the CRC consulting contract?
I'll motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
The next one is our second alphabet soup. This is ADS. And this is for Adam's work. I believe this is also the same terms, right, Amanda?
I'm gonna go yes. I asked for the scope. I did not read
Yeah,
it.
this is the exact same terms as again. This just keeps us, set for 2020 for Adam's financial reports and analysis that he then bills out attributable to. So it hits different tips if it's on different projects. Again, same terms as 2019. I know it helps Greg and finance out a lot as this commission grows. There's a lot going on.
I object.
Does this guy do good work? I mean,
Yeah,
does anybody
does-
know him?
Does he know what he's talking about?
I just don't think
You want a reference?
trust the citizens and Councilman Hopper's district. Questionable all around.
What does the D stand for in the name? Daryl, okay.
Again,
Brother Darrell.
I have a question just for my own clarification. Again, this one says that additional services would be agreed by parties. Does that mean that if he works an extra hour or there's something comes up, we want him to do extra stuff, that it has to come back to us for a vote? Because it's easy to get Adam to agree, just one of him.
I think this is another
But-
situation where you guys could designate somebody,
Would that be appropriate to do that? I mean, I don't know that it would have to come back before us for every item. That's all I'm just asking.
You could just use the same, why don't you use the same language and the same cap that you did with hirings that you could approve up to 10.
Well, I'm not worried about caps. I just, if something extra comes up, do we want it to come back before us? And is that what this is saying? I think it is, but I'm not a lawyer.
Well, if you want to bring it back, you could also, if it's something of significance, your president and your vice president could defer bringing it back to the next available
Well,
meeting.
I'm comfortable with just giving the president and vice president the authority to do that. And we can do that in a motion, just like the last time?
Yes.
And you could probably do it in the same motion to approving this contract if you wish, rather than have a separate motion if you like.
It'll never happen.
It's
It's pretty broad scope, so it's very unlikely.
Well, is there a motion?
Yeah, I
I
would make the motion to approve this PSA with the addition that the president and vice president of the RDC would represent the commission in these,
As a party.
as a party.
As referenced in the
That-
contract.
That would be delegated authority to
Delegate authority to,
act on behalf of the commission.
yeah.
Second.
Moved and second, further discussion. Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Jake? still want the discussion of, I do think, I like the background, the lights,
We're moving on now to, under old business, 2019 bonds.
So this relates to the TIF bonds we issued recently. Our financial advisor, Lynn Whitty, also happens to do tax work for Bose McKinney Evans, who was Regions Bank's counsel on that particular issue for the bonds. So London Whitty did have to send us a letter for our acknowledgement that we are aware that they do work for Bose McKinney, and we don't have an issue with that because it's tax work and their duty is to us on this particular issue.
This is a ratification matter, so is there a motion to ratify the addendum to the engagement letter with London Whitty?
So much.
Second.
Moving to second, further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Next, we'll go back to capital project reports. Presidential Block Main Street, contracted demolition with NASB Construction.
So over the last year, we've had a busy year on the main between McKinley and Washington. We secured all the property, and as I mentioned last meeting, we went out and got solicited quotes. NASB Construction, who's done a lot of work for the city, stormwater, as well as does work for the county, was the lowest responsive scope we got back. And so we'd ask for you to approve that from the central TIF for $98,000 for the demolition of 180, 178, 160, and 102 East Main.
I'll move for approval of that contract. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I'm sorry, where did you say that you paid from?
Central TIF.
Thank you.
Consideration of PCA with Aegis Environmental.
Yes, so we did do stage 1 and stage 2 on this. There is some areas that we think will be good to have a GS on site to help direct into the correct dumpsters as to where it gets hauled off to. And so this is a PSA with them to direct that work. Even little things like the light from Duke Energy has to go into a special thing because it was old. There's, that was hanging off the side of the building from PSI. And that amount was not to exceed $6,839 to kind of oversee and supervise and make sure materials are placed in the correct areas and shipped to the correct places.
Kevin has said it's not to exceed $68.39. It seems like a very specific amount.
Yeah, they're environmental scientists. Their numbers are always very specific. I'd have to look back into the scope. Is there soil testing or something in there that led that, or lab fee? I'm sure it might be the.
Just curious. I mean, that's a fine number. I just didn't know why it was such a specific number.
They always have very specific ones. I know some of it is like lab fees are like itemized out. So
And how do you accurately pronounce this?
I'm not good on pronunciation. I'm from up by Fort Wayne, so you can't trust anything I
Okay,
say.
you said it differently than I
Aegis
said.
or Aegeus, one of the two. I know it's Greek mythology.
Regardless of how it's pronounced, is there a motion to approve this PSA for them?
So, second.
Further discussion? Seeing that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And then now move on to Old City Park.
Yeah, so we have change order 5, and for reference, we are still, even with this change order, under 2% of the aggregate project, and change order was still within the money that was already approved for this project, because we included a contingency, but just asking to approve this change order. Had a couple different aspects of things we found when we're digging. When you're digging in Old Town, you kind of find a lot of head scratching things. So if there's any specific questions, I can answer that.
I don't think we want too specific questions after that comment. Is there, what's the dollar amount?
That is $51,885,000.
anticipate more change orders? Possibilities
Yes,
with
there'll
that?
be some more, but at the start of the project, when you're doing all the excavation, generally is when we have the most. It's, I think I ran the numbers, so off the contract, we're like 1.89%. Normally, like when I got funds for this, we look at, if we're feeling very confident, 7.5%. If it's Old Town, 10%. So we're well below where we'd be, and eventually we'll start getting into, well, they're already doing a ton of concrete work and stuff, and so once you get above grade, you can really control your own destiny a lot more. So.
Is there a motion to approve change order number 5?
Make that motion.
I'll second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Well, thank you guys very much. This is my last one, and I hope you all have good holidays if I don't see you.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Move to department reports. Mr. Hudson, anything from legal?
We're happy to report.
I have to talk with you when you're not happy, but I'm glad that you're happy. Mr. Watson, are you happy?
I am happy.
Good.
Nothing to report.
Great?
Good.
Gosh, we're on a roll. Okay. Daniel's getting up. He must not be happy.
Good afternoon. Just a couple items here for Worsville Road, Section 3. One, the usual update of relocation costs. No change from the prior meeting, so we are right around $466,000. I think the biggest update would be that NDOT did have the bid opening. This was back on November 20th, right before Thanksgiving. The engineer's estimate for the project was just under 10.7 million, and there are the 3 bidders for the project. Reith Riley was the low bidder at just over 9.2 million, and actually that was later awarded, so that is official. And there you have the other 2 bidders as well. The local funds for this are 20%. That's the amount that was actually approved by the RDC back in July. And we've already had that invoice. I believe it's actually on the docket before you tonight. It's in 2 payments. There are 2 project numbers associated with this. One is the roadway and one is the bridge associated with the project. So just a quick update on that.
Thank you.
Pre-construction meeting is going to be in mid-January, and then construction will begin later in the spring.
Good deal.
And then moving on to my next item for Worsville Road Section 2. This is from Honey Creek to Averett. That is under design. They've been in the land acquisition, the appraisal steps right now. We have received 6 parcels that for your consideration for the offers. And so I wanted to walk through each of those parcels real quick. Cumulatively, we are looking at about just under $20,000 for these 6 parcels. They range between $2,000 and $6,000 each. I'll leave it up to you how you want to approve these, whether individually or as a group, but I'll step through them. So the first here, parcel number 6, you can see the orange colored square that represents the permanent acquisition. The temporary is the yellow, and there are the amounts. Pretty straightforward in terms of the impacts, the land, the asphalt driveway, trees, bushes, plants, that type of thing. And so that's the amount for this particular parcel, $6,025. And below that is my requested action that you approve that funding for this, for the offer for this parcel, and then allow city staff to proceed with the offer and acquisition. The funding source for this will be the State Road 135 TIF. Actually, for all 6 of these parcels.
Am I missing something? Maybe I see 5 on here.
Oh, I see said 6 parcels, I'm sorry, yes, just 5 parcels.
Okay, well, let's go ahead, even though we're doing well on time, let's go ahead and do them one at a time if you don't mind. So that one is $6,025 is your requested action.
Correct.
Requested amount. Okay. Is there a motion to approve that offering price for parcel 6?
I'll second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes.
Next is parcel 8, just at the immediate east of parcel 6, on the south side of Stones Crossing there. Again, the permanent and temporary areas are identified, very similar impacts, and slightly less on the appraisal amount, $5,875. That is my requested motion to approval of the funding for that amount for this parcel. It allows us to proceed with the offer and acquisition.
Mr. Campbell moves to approval, I'll second that. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Parcel 13, this is the Clark Pleasant School parcel there. You can see by the image that we're just acquiring a very small fraction of the northwest corner there, 0.056 acres with some additional temporary. There is the asphalt walking path there and the gravel drive, or existing gravel driveway. There's the amount, $2,075, and similar requested motion.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Motion passes.
Parcel 19, just on the north side there across from the school. This is all permanent acquisition. It's really just impacting the lawn, the amount of $3,200 in the requested motion.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And our last.
And then the last parcel, here also a permanent acquisition, all seeded lawn, with the appraisal amount of $2,775 and the requested motion.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
That's all I have, unless you have any questions.
Any questions for Daniel? Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
Daniel. Mr. Stone, anything from your office? No
You
special
know my middle
projects?
name now, I am happy.
Okay, thank you. I saw the mayor in here. I think he's left. We have our December claims docket. We have two. The first, the regular claims docket is over $2,405,027.07. Is there a motion to approve that docket?
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And our carryover list totals $4,200 for 3 entries. I think for some payment for meetings from Mr. Harris and myself, and for professional services. It's only $100.
On the floorboard of your car somewhere, or what?
What we need that. Why is that?
What, the $100?
Yeah. from your-
Because the system closed down today, and for you to get paid for today's meeting, out of this year's
Okay.
funds, you have to carry it over to next year.
Hopefully you guys will make a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Huh?
Who made it first? Okay, missed it, sorry. Thank you.
I was hopeful that lots of people would.
We all
Is there anything else? Well, I guess we have Michelle Stamos to be reappointed to the Community Development Corporation for 2020. Oh, did we vote on the carryovers?
Aye.
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 Thank you, sorry.
By roll call. We'll do it by roll call.
Yeah, that's
He
why.
wants to know.
That's why it's.
Yeah,
going on.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
So the reappointment of Michelle to the Community Development Corporation, she has volunteered to serve again. Is there a motion to reappoint her? Campbell, is there a second? No. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Anything else to come before the good of the
Did-
cause?
We did receive an email today that your bond's closed. The first one was on November 22nd to 14.2 something. And the second one was closed today, the 2.6. So,
Good news, okay. We wish everyone a happy holidays. We'll see you next year. Okay. We'll stand adjourned at 5:04 p.m. Very efficient.